Okay, this video is going to show you whether or not you've got your bulk food application working properly. So when you launch it, one of the things you should see over here is it should have items A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. And these it should pick up from the number sign define statements in the code that you've written. Also over here, the cost per kilogram should also be numbers that are picked up from those defined statements. That means that when you run your program, it should start with these defaults, but anytime you change your number sign defines for Smarties to something other than 221, it should have the new name of maybe, I don't know, M&Ms and what the cost per kilogram is change as you change the defined statements. Now over here what's going to happen is that if you type in, say, 1 kilogram at cost per kilogram of 2.1, it should then add a subtotal over here and multiply all the kilograms times the cost per kilograms and so forth. Let's take a look and see how that works. Now, every time it's waiting for just specific inputs. So it's waiting for either an A to H, an R to reset everything, or a Q to quit. Now these can be either uppercase or lowercase, but anything that's not an A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, or an R or a Q, it should actually beep and do stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit something like a number 4 or 5, and notice it's showing error. If I have an M or something like that, it should be showing the error. Now it's not beeping because I've got the sound shut off to the beeping thing because I'm doing this video. But that's what you should see. And the way you do that is a \A to do the alarm thing. So make sure this basic functions are working properly. Now if you hit an A, notice it didn't wait for me to hit the enter key. What it did is it took in the A, and the way it did that was it did a variable, which is a character variable, equals getCH. And the getCH actually grabs it without needing an enter key, but then to display it like it's shown here, you need to put CH, P-U-T-C-H, to put that character back so you can echo it. And once you've done that, it should come up and ask for, right away, the number of kilograms. And the number of kilograms we're going to put in is just 1 in this case. If I put in 1, as I mentioned before up here, 1 times 2.21 should give us 2.21, and it should multiply all the numbers 0 times 0.74, 0 times 1.44, and so on to generate all these values each time, even though you're only changing one at a time. And it should come down and add all these together. 221 plus all these zeros should give you 221. Now notice here HST. HST is really the PST plus GST added together. So in your defined statements, you're going to have GST and PST, and you should have an HST thing that's equal the two of those, which is now 0.13, which is the 0.05 plus the 0.08, which is PST. Add those together, multiply it by the subtotal to get this, and then add those two together to get the total amount. Now over here you'll notice that the average cost per kilogram is given as 221, and that's pretty straightforward. You're going to take all of these kilograms here, add them all together, and divide by the appropriate subtotal to get the actual value, and it tells you how to do that in the documentation. Now if I hit an A again, at any point I can change that. Well, they really wanted 1.54 kilograms, and if I do that, then it should recalculate everything again according to 1.4, the 1.54 times this to come up with a new value. But it doesn't matter, it should still have the average cost per kilogram if we just one item as 2.21. Now just to see if your software is working properly, I'm going to hit a B and a 1, a C and a 1, enter a D, and a 1, enter an E, and a 1, enter an F, and a 1, enter G, and a 1, enter and an H, and a 1, enter. And I'm going to go back and change A to a 1. Now if you have 1, just to check to make sure all your calculations are working properly, if you have 1 kilogram for each one of these, then it should multiply out and give you these same numbers as you have over here, but it should give you a total of $8.63. The HST amount should be 1.12, and when you add those together, you should get 9.75 with an average cost per kilogram of 1.08. If you've got this working, you're pretty much on track. Now, the other thing that you want to do is check to make sure what happens. Let's do an R for reset. Let's make sure that works and everything's set back to 0. But if you hit an A, What happens if I put in a -4? A -4. Well, nothing should happen. If I put in something that um, isn't supposed to be properly typed in, like a minus something doesn't make sense. But if I hit an A, and you have to take care of this as far as checking for ranges of input. If I put an A and a 1, I've got my 1. Well, what happens if I do an A and then type a -5? What should happen? Well, if I put a -5, it should reset this back to 0 because that's not a proper input. Also, if I hit an A and I hit a 1, let's put back that 1. What happens if I hit an A and then hit something like, I don't know, a U? Let's try a U, and again it should set it back to 0. So even if I do an A and a 1 and then an A and say an H as the number of pounds, and you should never have, this is the kind of stuff that you have to worry about, and you should do an F flush before you grab your floating point number here. You should do an F flush, and if you do that and you type in an H, your software should say that if it's not valid, that it's less than, say, 1/1000th or something, it should set it back to 0 as an average. The other thing that you're going to run into over here is notice that if you take a look at the number of kilograms, everything is 0. And that means that your subtotal is 0, and you're going to be doing a divide by 0 if you're going to add all these things up. The average cost per kilogram is going to divide by 0 if your sum is 0, and it will be for the case where you first start up. So you're going to have an if statement in here somewhere that says, well, if your total for the numbers that you're adding up here is 0 and you're going to divide by 0, make sure you just print 0 as opposed to the actually do the calculation, because anything divided by 0 is going to give you a big problem. Now, the last thing, if I hit Q for quit, notice down here it says press any key to continue, and you can do that with a system pause kind of command in here after this, and once you've done that and you just hit the enter key or anything on that, it should get out. And that is exactly how your project should work. If it's working like this, then it's ready to submit digitally, and make sure you've got that honesty declaration, everything else ready to go, and you should be good to go. Remember not to lend or borrow code or you're in serious trouble. Anyway,